In 1948, a white mineral powder was officially registered as a pesticide in the United States. It cost pennies per application, wiped out entire ant colonies in under 10 days, and had been used since the 8th century. Tibetan traders called it Borax. Today, most Americans walk right past it. The gardening industry generates over $20 billion a year selling chemical sprays, synthetic fertilizers, and pest control products. And there is a $4 box sitting on the bottom shelf of every grocery store in America that replaces most of them. Today, we are counting down 17 things the gardening industry does not want you to know about borax. Number 8 will explain exactly why this knowledge went quiet. And number 1 is the reason it almost disappeared entirely. It kills ant colonies from the inside out. Borax is not a brand name. It is a naturally occurring mineral mined from ancient lake beds made of boron, sodium, oxygen, and water. Humans have been using it for more than 1,000 years. But what makes it devastating to insects is how it works inside their bodies. When an ant or a cockroach ingests borax, it destroys their digestive system from within. It strips the waxy coating off their exoskeleton, the layer that keeps moisture inside their body. Without it, they dehydrate and die. A fast-acting poison kills the bug that touches it. One bug. Borax lets that bug walk back to the colony first. It shares the bait with the queen, the workers, the larvae. Over 7 to 10 days, the entire colony collapses from the inside out. No commercial spray on that $20 billion garden aisle does that. And here is the other thing. Insects cannot build resistance to borax. It is a mineral, not a synthetic nerve agent. You cannot adapt to a rock. The chemical industry has reformulated their products dozens of times because pests keep evolving past them. Borax has not changed in 1,000 years, and it still works exactly the same way. One quick note before we go further. When I say borax, I mean the raw mineral you find in the laundry aisle. 20 mule team borax, the same product your grandmother used. Boric acid is the refined version, finer and more concentrated. For pest baits, boric acid is what you want. 99% technical grade, about $2 a pound. And that single pound lasts 3 full growing seasons. Make sure it is plain white powder, no fragrance, no blue crystals, no added repellent. Fragrance drives insects away instead of drawing them in. And the whole point of a bait is that the bug eats it willingly. Now that you understand how it works and what to buy, let me show you the pest most gardeners never even see coming. You know those little white moths that erupt in a cloud every time you brush against your tomato plants? Those are white flies, and they are doing far more damage than that dramatic little cloud suggests. They suck sap from the undersides of your leaves. They excrete sticky honeydew that breeds sooty mold, and they transmit plant viruses that can wipe out an entire crop before you even diagnose the problem. The garden aisle sells you sprays, neem oil, insecticidal soap, pyrethrin, $12 to $18 a bottle. And here is what they do not tell you. Whiteflies have a waxy coating on their wings that repels mist. You spray, the droplets beat up and roll off, and the whiteflies fly away for 10 minutes and come right back. You just paid $15 to mildly inconvenience an insect. Your grandmother did not spray, she wiped. Take a soft cloth, dampen it in a dilute boric acid solution. 1 teaspoon per gallon of warm water, then turn each leaf over and wipe the underside by hand. That is where the eggs are. That is where the nymphs are feeding. A direct wipe makes physical contact with every stage of the whitefly life cycle that a spray misses entirely. It takes longer than spraying, about 15 minutes per plant. But here's the difference. The spray kills maybe 30% of the adults and 0% of the eggs. The wipe kills the eggs, the nymphs, and any adults sitting on the leaf surface. Repeat every 5 to 7 days for 2 to 3 weeks, and the population collapses. 1 teaspoon of boric acid, a cloth, 15 minutes of patience, and results that a $15 spray bottle cannot match. That handles the pest hiding under your leaves. Now the one hiding under your feet. It destroys aphid colonies through their own bodyguards. This one changed how I think about pest control entirely. If you have aphids on your plants, your first instinct is to kill the aphids. Every product on the garden shelf is designed to do exactly that. But here is what they do not tell you. The aphids are not the problem. The ants are. Ants farm aphids the way humans farm cattle. They protect them, move them to fresh plants, and harvest the sweet honeydew the aphids produce. If you kill every aphid on your rose bush today, the ants will import a fresh colony from the neighbor's yard by Thursday. You are not solving the problem. You are feeding the pesticide cycle. The fix is devastatingly simple. Kill the farmer, not the crop. Mix 1 cup of warm water with 3 tablespoons of plain white sugar and 1 teaspoon of boric acid. That gives you a 1% solution. 1%, not 5, not 10, 1. Higher concentrations kill the ant before it reaches the colony. Then you have accomplished nothing. Soak cotton balls in the mixture. Place them in jar lids near the ant trails you can see around your raised beds. Cover each station with a small rock to keep rain off and pets out. Set 3 to 4 stations per bed. Here's what happens next. And this is the part that requires patience. In the first 48 hours, you will see more ants, not fewer. That is how you know it is working. They are recruiting. They are bringing the bait back to the queen. By day 7 to 9, the trails go quiet. By day 14, the colony is dead. And when the colony dies, the aphids lose their bodyguards. Without ants to protect them, ladybugs, lacewings, and parasitic wasps move in and clean up the aphids naturally. $1 in boric acid. 2 weeks of patience, 0 aphids. The garden aisle charges you $12 for a spray that kills the aphids today and guarantees you will buy another bottle next month. It is actually a fertilizer. This is the one that made me stop and reconsider everything I thought I knew about borax, because what I am about to tell you is something the gardening industry has worked very hard to keep separate in your mind. Borax is not just a pest killer, it is a fertilizer. Boron is one of the most widespread micronutrient deficiencies in agriculture worldwide. It affects crops in over 80 countries. When your soil is low in boron, your plants cannot do the most basic things. Pollen comes out empty. Fruit sets fail. Roots stay stunted. The growing tips die back. Cell walls weaken. Your tomatoes crack. Your strawberries stay small. And your peppers drop their flowers before they ever set fruit. And here is where the industry earns its margin. Walk into any garden center and look at the boron supplements. They are sold in small bottles with scientific-sounding names priced at $15 to $20 each. Read the active ingredient on the back. It is boron, the same element that makes up 40% of the $4 box of borax sitting in your laundry room. The application is simple. Dissolve half a teaspoon of borax in 1 gallon of water. That keeps you safely below 20 parts per million, which is the range your plants need without crossing into toxicity. Spray it on the leaves or pour it as a soil drench once at the beginning of the growing season. But I need to be very clear about something, because this is where most people make the mistake the industry profits from. The margin between enough boron and too much boron is razor thin. Adequate is half a part per million to 2 parts per million. Toxic is above 4. That is a difference of 2, not 202. If you guess, you will kill your plants. If you follow the recipe, you feed them for pennies. A $4 box that kills pests and feeds your plants. Now you are starting to understand why they do not advertise this. There is a reason I put this right after the fertilizer chapter. Because what I just told you about boron is powerful, and power without discipline destroys gardens. Never work boric acid directly into your soil. Never till it in. Never mix it into your compost. Excess boron does not wash away like nitrogen. It accumulates. And once your soil crosses that 4 parts per million threshold, your plants will tell you the newest leaves turn yellow at the edges first. Then they brown. Then they curl. Then the plant dies from the tips inward. The rule is surface application only. Bait stations sit on top of the soil. Perimeter lines go around the outside of your beds. Foliar sprays land on leaves, not roots. When you use borax as fertilizer, it is a fraction of a teaspoon dissolved in a full gallon of water applied once per season. That is all your soil needs. Extension bulletins from Michigan State University publish the exact thresholds. In leaf tissue, 20 to 100 parts per million is sufficient. Above 200 is toxic. In soil solution, anything above 4 parts per million starts causing damage. Test your soil before you add boron. A $15 soil test saves you from a season of dead plants. That is the kind of investment the garden aisle will never tell you to make, because it means you only buy what you actually need. Now that you know the boundary, let me show you how to build a perimeter that nothing crosses. Your grandmother did not spray her entire garden with chemicals every week. She drew lines, thin, invisible lines that no crawling pest would cross. Take a squeeze bottle, fill it with dry boric acid powder, and lay a thin line about 1/8 of an inch wide around the outside of each raised bed, about 2 in from the frame. That is it. 1 pound of boric acid covers approximately 8 raised beds, 4 feet by 8 ft each. 8 beds, 1 pound, about $2. Anything that crawls across that line, ants, earwigs, slugs, sow bugs, pill bugs, picks up the powder on its body. The boric acid sticks to their legs and undersides. They carry it back to wherever they came from. Some die on the way, others spread it to the rest of the colony. The only weakness is rain. Water dissolves the powder and washes the barrier away. So reapply after every significant rainfall. In zones 7 through 10, where rain is frequent in the growing season, plan on reapplying every 3 to 4 weeks. In zones 3 through 6, a spring application and one midsummer refresh are usually enough. That perimeter stops the crawlers. But what about the flyers? 6 things in and you already have a pest killer, a fertilizer, and a perimeter defense system, all from one $4 box. The gardening industry spent decades hoping you would never figure this out. But we are just getting started. It takes down wasps without getting you stung. Wasps are territorial and aggressive, and every instinct tells you to attack the nest. But attacking a wasp nest is how people end up in emergency rooms. There is a quieter way. Find the flight corridor. Every wasp nest has one. It is the path the wasps take between the nest and their food source. You will see them flying the same route back and forth like a highway in the air. Dust that corridor with dry boric acid powder. Not the nest, the corridor. The wasps fly through the powder. It sticks to their bodies. They carry it back to the nest, feed it to the larvae, share it with the queen. Over 1 to 2 weeks, the colony weakens and dies. You never had to stand within 10 ft of the nest. For yellow jackets that nest in the ground, wait until after dark when every worker is inside. Mix 2 tablespoons of boric acid in a quart of warm water and pour it slowly into the entrance hole. Cover the hole with a rock. By morning, the colony is collapsing. Wasps above ground, yellow jackets below, both handled without a single sting. Next, the pest hiding right under your feet that most gardeners never think about until it is too late. Ticks do not jump. They do not fly. They sit on the tips of tall grass and low shrubs with their front legs extended, waiting for a warm body to brush past. That behavior is called questing, and it happens most often along the edges of your property, where lawn meets woods, where garden meets fence line. Your grandmother kept a clean border. She spread a 3F buffer of dry borax along every fence line, every property edge, every transition zone where mowed grass met growth. Ticks avoid treated ground. Now, I need to be transparent about something. This is a traditional practice that has been passed down through generations of gardeners. The scientific research specifically on borax and ticks is limited compared to what we know about ants or fleas. What the evidence does show is that borax dehydrates soft-bodied organisms. On contact, and tick larvae are soft-bodied. The adult ticks with their harder shells are more resistant. Reapply the buffer after rain, just like the raised bed perimeter, and combine it with other tick reduction strategies. Keep your grass short, remove leaf litter. Create a gravel or wood chip barrier between your lawn and wooded areas. Borax is one layer of defense, not the only one. Starting to see the pattern? A $4 box building invisible walls around everything you want to protect. If you are watching this thinking about all the money you have spent on products that stopped working after the first rain, you are not alone. Borax kills weeds. That part is true. But this chapter comes with the biggest warning in the entire video. And I am going to say it twice so there is no confusion. Dissolve 1 tablespoon of borax in 1 quart of water. Spray it directly on the leaves of the weeds growing in your driveway cracks, your gravel paths, your fence lines. Within a few days, the weeds brown, wilt, and die. It costs almost nothing, and it works on most broadleaf weeds. Here's the warning: never ever use this on your garden soil. I will say that again. Never on your garden soil. Boron does not break down the way conventional herbicides do. It accumulates in the earth. Repeated applications will sterilize your soil for months, sometimes years. Nothing will grow there. Not weeds, not vegetables, not flowers, nothing. Driveways, gravel, pavers, fence lines. That is where borax belongs as a weed killer. Your grandmother knew this. She sprayed her sidewalk cracks in April and did not touch a weed all summer, but she never brought that spray bottle anywhere near her tomatoes. Kills weeds for pennies, feeds plants as fertilizer, wipes out colonies from the inside. Now here is a use that will make you question everything the gardening industry has ever told you. The industry buried this knowledge on purpose. You have never seen a borax commercial on television, not once. And there is a reason. In 1988, the brands that had been selling borax products to American households for almost a century changed hands. The 20 Mule Team line, Boraxo hand soap, Borateam laundry booster, all of them were sold to the Dial Corporation. And after that sale, something happened that no one in the industry talks about. The advertising stopped. The commercials disappeared. The product stayed on the shelf, but nobody was telling you to buy it anymore. Here is why. The gardening industry alone generates over $20 billion a year. Chemical sprays, synthetic fertilizers, targeted pesticides, each one sold at $8, $12, $20 a bottle, and sitting on the bottom shelf of every grocery store in America is a $4 box that replaces most of them. One estimate suggests the average American household spends over $300 a year on products that a single box of borax could handle. Multiply that by 130 million households, and you begin to understand the scale of what is at stake. That is not a market anyone wants to disrupt. That is a market people want to protect. And the regulations have tightened. California has enacted legislation banning the manufacture and sale of boric acid effective January 2027. Other states may follow. The product that has been safely used for more than 1,000 years, that the EPA itself classifies as not likely to be carcinogenic, is being quietly regulated out of reach. $20 billion a year. That is what this $4 box threatens. Now you know why the knowledge went quiet. Thrips are those tiny dark slivers on your leaves that most gardeners do not even notice until the damage is done. They are barely visible to the naked eye, but what they do to your garden is devastating. They suck sap. They spread tomato spotted wilt virus. And unlike most pests, they hide their eggs in the soil beneath the plant they're attacking. That means even if you kill every adult on the leaf surface, the next generation is already waiting underground. The fix is a dual attack. First, drench the soil around the base of the plant with a boric acid solution, 1 teaspoon per gallon of water. That kills the eggs and larvae below the surface. Then spray the same dilution on the foliage to take out the adults on top. Repeat every 5 to 7 days for 2 to 3 weeks. You are hitting both generations at once above and below, and the population has nowhere to rebuild. But here's the rule that matters more than any recipe in this entire video. Boric acid is moderately toxic to bees. It sticks to their fuzzy bodies, strips the protective wax from their legs, and can dehydrate them on contact. So you spray early morning before 7 a.m., before the pollinators are active. And you never ever spray directly on open flowers. Not borax, not boric acid, not any solution containing either one. Open flowers are off limits. Your grandmother killed the pests and protected the bees. She did not need a label to tell her that. She just knew when to spray and when to stop. And that kind of wisdom is something the garden aisle can never sell you. Fleas do not live on your lawn. They live in the shade, under porches, beneath shrubs, along fence lines where the sun never reaches. That is where flea larvae thrive, feeding on organic debris and cool, moist soil. By the time a flea reaches your pet or your ankles, it has already completed most of its life cycle in those shaded patches. Mix borax with sand in a 1.3 ratio. Broadcast it across every shaded area in your yard under the porch, along the foundation beneath dense shrubs. The borax dehydrates the flea larvae on contact, breaking the reproductive cycle where it starts. 2 rules. First, apply when there is no rain in the forecast for at least 72 hours. Rain dissolves the borax before it can do its work. Second, be patient. A full flea cycle takes 4 to 6 weeks. You will not see results overnight, but you will see them. Most commercial flea yard treatments cost $15 to $20 and need reapplication every month. A bag of sand and a cup of borax covers an entire yard for under $3. And instead of waiting for fleas to reach the house and then fighting them indoors, you are making their stronghold lethal before they ever reach your door. Fleas handled in the yard before they reach the house. Now, one of the most frustrating pests in any garden, and the one most people never see until it is too late. Spider mites are the invisible enemy. They are so small that most gardeners do not realize they have an infestation until the damage is already done. Tiny dots on the underside of your leaves, barely visible without a magnifying glass. But look closer and you will see the telltale signs. Fine silk webbing stretched between leaf veins, yellow stippling across the surface, leaves that curl dry out and drop. By the time you notice the webs, the colony has been feeding for weeks. The garden center sells you miticides, $15 to $20 a bottle, and most of them kill on contact, which sounds effective until you realize that spider mites reproduce so fast that a new generation hatches every 5 to 7 days. You spray Monday, the survivors lay eggs Tuesday. By the following Monday, you are back where you started, minus $15. Boric acid handles it differently. Mix a very dilute solution, weaker than what you would use for ants or thrips. Half a teaspoon per gallon of water. Load it into a fine mist sprayer and coat the undersides of every affected leaf. The boric acid dehydrates the mites on contact the same way it strips the waxy coating off an insect exoskeleton. But here's the part that separates your grandmother's method from a commercial product. You must rinse the plants with plain water 24 hours after application. This is not optional. Boric acid residue accumulates on leaf tissue, and if you leave it on, it will burn the very leaves you are trying to save. A light spray from the garden hose the next morning washes the residue away and leaves the plant clean. Repeat every 5 to 7 days for 2 to 3 weeks, always followed by a rinse the next day. The earlier you catch the infestation, the fewer applications you need. If you wait until the webs are thick and visible, you are already several generations behind. Spider mites handled with precision. Now, the last 6 will change how you think about your garden entirely. 11 things down: pest killer, fertilizer, perimeter defense, weed killer, spider mite treatment, pollinator protocol, and an industry that spent decades making sure you never connected these dots. In 2007, the United States Department of Agriculture published a research paper out of the Forest Products Laboratory in Madison, Wisconsin. Paper number FPL RP655. It tested a wood preservative made from 93% borax and 7% copper hydroxide. The results were remarkable. Wood treated with this simple solution resisted termites and decay for 20 to 30 years in ground contact conditions. Think about what that means for your garden. Every raised bed frame, every fence post, every trellis support, every wooden stake in your garden is vulnerable to rotten termites. The standard solution is pressure-treated lumber, which costs a premium, or paying a professional termite treatment company, which runs between $500 and $3,000. Or you do what the research paper described: dissolve 1 pound of borax in 1 gallon of hot water with a tablespoon of glycerin. The glycerin helps the solution penetrate deeper into the wood fibers. Brush it onto bare, untreated wood. Let it dry completely. Apply a second coat. Total cost about $8. Protection period 20 to 30 years versus $3,000 for a professional termite treatment that needs renewal every 5 years. $8, 30 years. They charge $3,000. Number 3 is even more outrageous. This is the chapter the pesticide industry profits from the most. Because when borax fails, it is never because borax does not work. It is because someone made one of these 4 mistakes, got frustrated, and went back to the garden aisle to buy a $12 spray. Mistake number 1, spraying aphids without killing the ants. We covered this in chapter 15. If you spray aphids but leave the ant colony intact, the ants will restock your plants with fresh aphids within days. You spent money and time on a solution that the ants undid overnight. Mistake number 2, using 10% boric acid instead of 1%. This is the most common error. People think stronger is better. It is not. At 10%, the ant dies before it reaches the colony. You killed one worker. The queen is still laying eggs. At 1%, the ant lives long enough to share the bait with the entire colony. Weaker is the weapon. Mistake number 3, over-application. Borax is a micronutrient at tiny doses and a toxin at slightly higher ones. The difference between feeding your soil and sterilizing it is a matter of a few parts per million. Follow the recipe. Measure precisely. More is not better. More is death for your garden. Mistake number 4, applying before rain. Borax dissolves in water. If you lay a perimeter line or a bait station and it rains that night, you have accomplished nothing. Check the forecast. Apply on a dry morning with at least 72 hours of clear weather ahead. 4 mistakes. Every single one benefits the company selling you the expensive alternative, and every single one is preventable with knowledge they would rather you did not have. Number 2 is the trick that tripled the results. In the 8th century, Tibetan traders carried a white mineral across the Himalayas on the backs of yaks. They called it Borax, and it was one of the most valuable trade goods on the Silk Road. It traveled from Tibet through Persia, across the Arabian Peninsula, and into the workshops of European metalworkers who used it to solder gold and glaze ceramics. Those traders knew something about borax that modern pest control companies have spent decades trying to make you forget. They mixed it with unrefined cane sugar, not the white granulated sugar you buy at the store. Unrefined, dark, rich in minerals and molasses. And that ancient trick is the single most effective upgrade you can make to any borax bait recipe in your garden. Here is the modern version. Instead of plain white sugar in your bait mixture, substitute 1 teaspoon of blackstrap molasses. Blackstrap molasses has a stronger, more complex scent profile than granulated sugar. It draws ants from significantly farther away. Whereas sugar bait might attract ants within a few feet, a molasses bait pulls them in from across the yard. The result is dramatic. A standard sugar bait takes 7 to 10 days to collapse a colony. With blackstrap molasses, the same colony can be finished in 5 to 6 days. The ants recruit faster because the scent is more compelling. More workers visit the bait. More bait reaches the queen. The timeline compresses, a trick from 8th century Tibet that your grandmother somehow still knew. Number 1 is the reason why this knowledge almost disappeared. In 1988, the borax brands changed hands. The commercials went silent. Regulations tightened. And a generation of gardeners grew up without ever being told that a $4 box could replace their entire pest control cabinet. But your grandmother never stopped. She did not wait for the aphids to arrive. She did not wait for the ants to build trails. She did not wait for the weeds to crack through the driveway. She applied borax before any of it happened. That was her number 1 secret, and it is the one the industry fears the most. Because prevention means you buy the $4 box once, and you do not come back to the garden aisle for months. One morning, 1 box, the entire garden protected for the season. The Environmental Protection Agency classifies boric acid as not likely to be carcinogenic to humans. It has been registered as a pesticide in this country since 1948. It has been used by humans for more than 1,000 years. It does not build resistance. It does not contaminate groundwater. It breaks down into boron, a nutrient your soil already needs. Prevention costs nothing, but infestation costs everything. That is what your grandmother understood, and that is what a $20 billion industry has been hoping you would never figure out. 1,000 years ago, Egyptian priests placed whole onions inside the tombs of pharaohs. They believed the concentric rings symbolized eternal life, each layer a circle within a circle without beginning or end. Those priests were wrong about the afterlife, but they were not wrong about the onion. The part they threw away, the dry, papery brown skin peeled off before the meal, turns out to carry one of the densest concentrations of potassium, calcium, magnesium, and iron found anywhere in a household kitchen. Those outer layers also contain a compound called quercetin, the same antioxidant that makes red wine and blueberries good for the human heart. Inside a plant, quercetin works as a shield. It blocks ultraviolet damage during heat waves, slows fungal infection at the cellular level, and steadies the plant's internal chemistry when temperatures swing from one extreme to the other. Here is where most gardeners make the wrong turn. They hear about onion peels and they dig them straight into the soil, expecting the nutrients to leach out. That method works, but it takes 3 to 4 weeks. By the time the fibers break down, the wilting plant above is already past saving. The real trick is water. A handful of dry skins dropped into a quart jar of cool tap water and left for 24 to 48 hours. Nothing more. Within a day, the water shifts to the color of weak tea. By the second day, it deepens to the shade of amber. That color is potassium, magnesium, and quercetin, dissolving into a form the roots can absorb immediately. No composting, no waiting, no breaking down. A yellowing tomato plant watered with this liquid begins to recover within days. Stems thicken. New leaves come in a deeper green. The plant's own immune system switches on, and stem rot slows before it spreads. Here's the part nobody on television ever says out loud. No fertilizer company in North America can build a business around onion peel tea. There is no way to package it, no patent to file, no premium shelf space to sell. That is the real reason this method disappeared from mainstream gardening advice over the last 70 years. Not because the blue crystals in plastic bags work better, but because the crystals can be printed with a logo and sold for $9 a box. Onion peel tea feeds the plant directly, but the next ingredient does not feed the plant at all. It feeds something far more important: the billions of invisible workers living in the top inch of every garden bed. Places like vegetable gardens, flower beds, porches, or areas near the woods are often hot spots for pests like squirrels, rabbits, mice, or insects. To protect these areas, Grandma used a very simple but effective way: sprinkling cayenne pepper powder in a circle like an invisible fence, making animals wary and stay away. The secret lies in a compound called capsaicin, which creates that signature spicy heat. It acts as a strong irritant to the sensitive noses and paws of animals, making them feel uncomfortable and turn away as soon as they touch it. However, when using this powder, companies often warn that it can cause a burning sensation in the eyes or noses of indoor pets, and can even affect beneficial insects like bees and butterflies if you aren't careful. The most accurate way to do it is to sprinkle the powder close to the ground, absolutely avoiding direct contact with blooming flowers, and don't use it in windy places or near where pets like to nap. After each watering or right after the rain stops, it's necessary to sprinkle a new layer to keep the protection working. Compared to spending dozens of dollars on toxic chemical sprays, cayenne pepper powder is very low cost, safe, and friendly to our living environment. This $2 cardboard box always sat in a corner of Grandma's kitchen, and few people know that if you combine it with powdered sugar, you'll have a cockroach-fighting weapon 3 times stronger than chemical sprays. You'll mix baking soda and powdered sugar at a 1.1 ratio and leave it along pathways and kitchen corners and hidden spots around the house. The powdered sugar acts as an irresistible sweet bait, luring insects to eat it, while the baking soda acts as the secret weapon. Once inside the insect's body, baking soda causes reactions that upset their digestive system and destroys them from the inside out. One point to be especially careful about is that baking soda is highly alkaline, so sprinkling it directly onto garden soil can burn plant roots or make the soil hard over time. However, if you carefully place the mixture in small plates or bottle caps instead of sprinkling it on the ground, all risks are eliminated. Additionally, you can use water mixed with baking soda to wipe surfaces to erase the scent trails that ants use to find their way. Chemical companies hate this formula because it's too cheap and easy to do at home, making them lose revenue from their complex-sounding pest control services. But now that you know this tip, you don't need to waste money on those chemicals anymore. Number 25, making toothpaste. In the 60s, mixing a pinch of this powder with water to brush your teeth every morning was a must-have habit for the older generation. The whole family, from the oldest to the youngest, started their morning with a small bowl of this white powder. However, for a long time after that, modern dentists issued warnings and even tried to stop people because they feared its abrasiveness would permanently destroy tooth enamel. They thought those tiny particles would wear down the natural protective layer, making teeth sensitive and vulnerable. But today, scientists turn the tables by revealing a surprising truth. Baking soda has an extremely low dentin abrasivity RDA index at about 7, which is much safer than many modern high-abrasive toothpastes. Its mechanism works by releasing free radicals to break down stubborn stains on the teeth while neutralizing the acid secreted by bacteria, protecting the mouth from cavities. To apply Grandma's way correctly and safely for your enamel, you can mix 1 or 4 teaspoons of the powder with a little water or regular toothpaste and brush gently for about 2 minutes. The secret here is moderation. You should only do this 1 to 2 times a week to avoid thinning that precious enamel layer. Cinnamon powder doesn't just bring a pleasant scent to baked goods. It's also a quiet weapon for dealing with stubborn ants. Ant marching lines often appear along paths or around tree trunks. And just by sprinkling a layer of cinnamon powder along these paths, we can see a clear change. The strong scent of cinnamon has the ability to completely disrupt the navigation scent trails that ants use to talk to each other, making them lose their way and forcing them to find another path away from the protected area. While the results are impressive, cinnamon powder usually only works for a short time, and using too much can change the microbial system in the garden soil. However, don't let that drive you toward the chemicals that companies advertise. To get the best results, Grandma usually only sprinkled the powder on fixed paths and combined it with cleaning up the ants' food sources so she didn't have to rely on cinnamon constantly. This is a nearly zero-cost solution because cinnamon is a common spice that any kitchen has on hand. Using cinnamon powder instead of chemical ant killers not only saves money but also keeps your living space smelling naturally fresh. In dark areas like garages or drainage systems, the presence of mice is always a big worry for every family. Instead of using toxic baits that can be dangerous to pets, Grandma often made her own trap from baking ingredients, flour, yeast, and a bit of shredded cheese. The inviting smell of the cheese lures the mice to eat the mixture. But what they don't expect is the power of the yeast. Once in the stomach, the yeast begins a strong fermentation process, creating gas that makes the mice bloated and eventually suffocates them because they can't digest it. This is an extremely cheap and effective solution for hard-to-reach places like hollow walls or crevices. Although effective, this method is sometimes discouraged because it causes a painful death for the animal. And if a mouse dies inside a hollow wall, it causes a foul smell that's hard to handle. Therefore, Grandma usually preferred using peppermint to scare them away or using cage traps to easily control their location. However, in hard-to-reach areas like ventilation systems, this is still an effective way to use cheap food ingredients that cost less than $1 and are always available. Compared to chemical rat poisons, the mixture of flour and yeast is much simpler and doesn't endanger the surrounding environment. Number 23, relieving itchy skin. Whenever summer arrived with its buzzing mosquitoes, Grandma was the one to rescue the kids with a cool, thick paste applied to those swollen red bites. She would mix 3 parts powder with 1 part water to create a paste. Dab it directly onto the itchy spot for about 5 to 10 minutes, and then rinse it off with cool water. That uncomfortable, itchy feeling vanished almost instantly once the white powder dried on the skin. However, in the 1960s, when modern medicine wasn't as advanced, this folk remedy was condemned because the strong alkalinity of the soda was thought to destroy the skin's protective acid barrier, making it more sensitive and prone to infection. Experts worried that improper use would cause unnecessary irritation. Luckily, the latest studies have confirmed that baking soda can neutralize acidic irritants from insect bites and possesses mild anti-inflammatory properties. It really is a lifesaver from nature that calms itching like magic. Just remember to only spot treat and avoid applying it over large areas like your whole face to protect your skin's natural balance. 9,000 years ago, somewhere along the banks of the Yangtze River in central China, a group of early farmers became the first people on Earth to cultivate rice. That grain eventually spread to Korea around 1500 BCE, then to Japan during the Yayoi period. It became the foundation of sake, makgeolli, and the fermented rice wines that have shaped Asian cuisine for millennia. But the water used to rinse that rice, the cloudy liquid that billions of people pour down the drain every single evening, turns out to be one of the most powerful soil treatments ever studied under a microscope. Fresh rice water carries starches, B vitamins, and small amounts of iron and zinc. Poured straight from the pot, it is mildly useful, but the transformation begins 3 to 5 days later after the water has been left at room temperature in a covered jar. The liquid takes on a faintly sour smell, like the first hint of sourdough starter. Most people would pour it out at that point. Doing so throws away the most valuable part. That sour smell is the signature of a microbial bloom. Lactic acid bacteria and wild yeasts have colonized the liquid. And this is where the research of a Japanese agricultural scientist named Dr. Teruo Higa becomes important. In the 1980s at the University of the Ryukyus in Okinawa, Dr. Higa introduced the concept of effective microorganisms now used on farms in more than 150 countries. The microbes at the heart of his formula are the same ones that appear naturally in fermented rice water for free with no shipping cost. When this fermented liquid is poured onto a garden bed, diluted 1 part to 10 parts water, the bacteria meet the microbes already living around the roots. The starches act as a feast. Within a single week, the microbial population around a treated plant can triple. 1 teaspoon of healthy soil after this kind of treatment holds more than 1 billion living organisms, more than the population of North America, packed into a volume smaller than a coffee bean. The rice water does not feed the plant, it builds the plant support system. It is the difference between handing someone a single meal and handing them a working kitchen. Food runs out, a kitchen keeps producing. Now the common mistake, nearly every first-time user pours rice water straight from the pot, fresh and mild. That does almost nothing. The fermentation is the entire point. If the liquid does not carry that faint sour tang after 3 to 5 days, it is not ready. Skipping that step is the single biggest reason people try this method once, see no result, and never try it again. And here is the quiet truth that rarely gets mentioned. The water that billions of households discard every evening contains the same beneficial microorganisms that commercial soil inoculants sell for $12 to $15 a bottle. The biology has not changed since the farmers along the Yangtze discovered it 9,000 years ago. Only the packaging has. Rice water rebuilds the soil from the inside. But a plant already collapsing today does not have time to wait for the soil to heal. It needs something it can absorb through its roots in hours, not weeks. And that something has been hiding in plain sight along the banks of rivers and streams for longer than human civilization has existed. Number 20, putting out grease fires. In Grandma's kitchen, the baking soda jar was always kept in the most reachable spot, not just for cooking, but as a powerful firefighting assistant. If a grease pan accidentally caught fire, you were never to use water, but had to pour this white powder on it immediately. This tip was once warned against by safety experts who feared that if not poured carefully, the sudden pressure of CO2 gas could splash the burning oil around, making the fire spread and become more dangerous. However, science has proven that when exposed to high temperatures, baking soda releases a large amount of CO2, which helps cut off the oxygen supply and puts out the flames quickly. This is a clever chemical reaction that stops a disaster right as it begins. To apply this tip safely, the first thing to do is turn off the heat source immediately, then pour a large amount of powder directly onto the flames. Always remember, never use water to put out a grease fire because it will cause extremely dangerous steam explosions. While this is a great emergency measure, we must be cautious and only use it for small fires to ensure maximum safety. Number 19, treating diaper rash for children. Those red marks from diaper rash always made babies cry. And every time that happened, Grandma would gently mix a little baking soda into a warm bath to soothe the baby's delicate skin. It was a natural remedy full of love that Grandma used through many generations. In the 1960s, this method was frowned upon by pediatricians and medical facilities. They argued that a newborn's skin is extremely thin and sensitive. So if the soda mixture was too strong, its alkalinity could cause mild chemical burns or severe dryness. That concern wasn't groundless if the dosage wasn't strictly controlled. However, today's studies show that when mixed in the right ratio, baking soda actually helps balance the skin's pH, reduces inflammation, and miraculously calms redness without the need for chemicals. To do it Grandma's way, add 2 tablespoons of powder to a warm bath. Let the baby soak for about 10 to 15 minutes without using extra soap. Then gently pat the skin dry with a soft towel. This is an effective natural alternative to creams filled with chemicals, as long as we measure the dosage accurately. In the year 460 BC, on the island of Kos in the Aegean Sea, a Greek physician named Hippocrates made a note that would echo through medicine for the next 2,500 years. He observed that chewing the bark of a willow tree relieved fever and eased pain. He did not know the chemistry behind it. Neither did the Sumerian healers who had used the same bark centuries before him, nor the Egyptian physicians who had recorded its properties on papyrus even earlier. What all of them were tasting without realizing it was salicylic acid, the same compound that in 1899 a German chemist would synthesize into a white tablet called aspirin, which became the most widely used medicine in human history. The name salicylic comes directly from salix, the Latin word for willow. Here's the part that connects the doctor's office to the garden shed. Willow bark also contains indolabutyric acid known as IBA, one of the most effective natural rooting hormones ever identified. When a fresh willow cutting is placed in water, those two compounds leach into the liquid within 24 to 48 hours. The IBA stimulates root development. The salicylic acid acts as a natural antifungal and antibacterial agent, protecting the vulnerable new roots from infection before they have a chance to harden. The method is simple. Cut several young willow twigs, each about the thickness of a pencil, into pieces roughly 6 in long. The younger and greener the wood, the higher the concentration of IBA. Place the cut twigs into a jar of water and let them soak for 1 to 2 days. The water takes on a greenish-yellow tint and carries a faintly sweet smell of fresh bark. That liquid is now a rooting solution. Dip any cutting into it before planting or water a struggling transplant with it during the first week after moving it to a new bed. The results are measurable. University trials have shown that willow water increases rooting success rates in cuttings by 20 to 30% compared to plain water and approaches the performance of synthetic rooting powder at a fraction of the complexity. The common mistake is using old thick branches. The hormone concentration in willow drops sharply as the wood ages and hardens. The tips of new growth, the soft green shoots at the ends of branches in early spring, carry the highest levels. Using mature wood produces a liquid that looks the same, but does almost nothing. Here is the anti-industry angle that almost no nursery will mention. Synthetic rooting hormone powder sells for $8 to $12 a container. The active ingredient IBA is the same compound already present in every willow twig growing along every riverbank in the Northern Hemisphere. The garden industry charges for a product that nature has been producing for free since before any human language existed to name it. Willow water helps new roots grow. But what about roots that are already dying underground, rotting in soil that holds too much water and not enough air? For that kind of emergency, the garden needs something faster, something that works in minutes, not days. Number 22, unclogging drains. That fun sizzling sound when Grandma poured baking soda down the drain, followed by a splash of white vinegar, is an unforgettable memory from those afternoon house cleanings. That bubbling reaction was actually Grandma's way of keeping the pipes clear and free of odors. For a long time, experts were skeptical of this method, claiming the chemical reaction only produced salt water and CO2 gas, which wasn't strong enough to knock out long-term grease buildup. Corporations even spent billions of dollars to convince everyone that this was an outdated and useless method compared to strong chemical cleaners. Yet in reality, that powerful bubbling reaction helps loosen dirt buildup and naturally breaks up minor clogs without damaging the pipes or poisoning the water supply. To do this, just pour half a cup of powder down the drain, followed by a cup of white vinegar. Let it sit for 15 minutes for the reaction to fully work, and then flush it with boiling water. While very heavy clogs still need professional tools, this remains a safe, eco-friendly, and very economical cleaning solution for every family, just as it was in those lean years of the 60s. After finishing its job of warming the house, the wood ash left in the fireplace is put to use as a priceless garden protection weapon. For snails that are always waiting to destroy tree roots or aphids attacking young sprouts, wood ash is a physical and chemical barrier they cannot cross. When you sprinkle a layer of ash around the base, its dry, rough surface and natural alkalinity strongly irritate the delicate bodies of soft-bodied insects, making them run away immediately. Grandma would take advantage of early mornings when dew was still on the leaves to sprinkle a fine layer of ash, creating a shield to protect the plants from aphids. Fertilizer and pesticide companies never want you to know about this free material, because it not only protects plants but also provides a large amount of potassium, calcium, and minerals to the soil. And instead of spending money on expensive snail killers that can poison the soil, you just need to collect ash from the fireplace after each winter. The only thing to keep in mind is not to use it for acid-loving plants and avoid sprinkling it too thick so you don't change the soil's pH level too suddenly. The chemical industry often complicates things to make you believe only their products work. But wood ash is proof that you can recycle waste into great protective value. Moths absolutely hate borax, and that's why Grandma's wood-scented closets stayed intact for decades without ever being attacked by termites or moths. It's the combination of the two strongest powders in the home, borax and baking soda. Take borax and mix it with an equal part of baking soda. Borax acts as an abrasive that wears down the insect's protective shell, while baking soda keeps things dry, preventing mold and odors from growing. Nowadays, many people have to buy moisture-absorbing hang-ups or deodorizing stones for their closets, with each pack costing anywhere from a few dollars to dozens, and they have to be replaced regularly. Meanwhile, with a cheap box of borax and baking soda, you can treat a large space and still get the same results. However, you must keep in mind that borax is toxic if children or pets accidentally swallow it, and it also acts as a herbicide that can kill green plants if sprinkled in the garden. So you need to be careful not to let the mixture touch clothes directly and always clean up after use, as borax can be harmful if used the wrong way. When applied correctly, this is a budget-friendly and effective way to protect fabrics long-term without depending on expensive products. Number 21, removing pesticides from fruit. Nowadays, when we struggle with all sorts of expensive fruit and vegetable washes, few remember that Grandma had a very simple and effective way to clean food using that orange jar of powder. Soaking vegetables in water mixed with baking soda used to be the standard for cleanliness in her kitchen. However, this tip also faced mixed opinions. People warned that soaking for more than 15 minutes could cause the loss of precious vitamins and even let chemicals seep back into the fruit through osmotic pressure. But today's scientific evidence has proven her genius, confirming that baking soda can break down and lift pesticides, dirt, and wax from the surface of produce much more effectively than plain water. To get clean food Grandma's way, mix 1 teaspoon of powder for every 2 cups of water. Soak the produce for about 12 to 15 minutes and then rinse thoroughly under running water. The most important thing is to stick to the correct soaking time to ensure you keep all the nutrients while removing as many toxins as possible. This really is a safe and economical solution that brings peace of mind to every family meal. Every morning, Grandma never wastefully threw away coffee grounds. She always dried and ground them fine to become a multi-purpose weapon. The caffeine and diterpenes in coffee are actually natural neurotoxins to many types of insects. Sprinkling coffee grounds around the base of plants not only drives away ants and snails because the strong smell confuses their sense of smell, but it also helps improve soil quality for plants that like acid, especially when you put dry coffee grounds in a ceramic dish and light them. The smoke that drifts out is a wonderful barrier to keep mosquitoes from bothering your living space. Why spend money on chemical mosquito coils full of toxins when you can use this fragrant waste right from your kitchen? Mosquito chemical manufacturers will never encourage you to do this because they would lose a lucrative market. Just be careful not to sprinkle it too thick to avoid mold, and only use it for suitable plants like roses or hydrangeas. This is a zero-cost solution that helps protect your home and garden in the most sustainable way. Combining the enjoyment of a good cup of coffee with protecting the house is a beautiful part of the thrifty and smart lifestyle of the previous generation. Not only does it add a spicy kick to hot dogs or pretzels, but dry mustard powder is also an unbreakable firewall for lush vegetable beds threatened by snails and soil worms. The sulfur compounds in allyl isothiocyanate in mustard cause intense irritation to the nervous system and sensitive skin of soft-bodied insects. Grandma would often sprinkle a thin line around the vegetable beds as immediate punishment for any intruder. Pest control companies often spread the word that mustard can burn leaves so that you'll be scared and buy industrial snail killers that hurt the soil. In reality, if you wear a mask while doing it and only sprinkle around the edge of the pots or garden beds, strictly avoiding direct contact with stems and leaves, the results are very impressive and extremely cheap. This solution is far safer for the microbes under the soil than expensive chemicals. The chemical industry can't profit from simple bags of mustard powder in the supermarket, which is why they pretend it doesn't exist in the list of pest killers. By using mustard, you are maintaining a truly organic garden where life is protected by pure natural ingredients. Number 17, deodorizing the refrigerator. The image of a small bowl filled with white powder sitting quietly in the corner of the fridge used to be a common sight in every family kitchen. It was trusted to be the guardian that would absorb all those mixed food smells, keeping the inside of the fridge smelling fresh and ensuring the quality of the food. In fact, some studies suggested this method wasn't effective because the surface area of the powder was too small to clean the air for a whole large fridge, and activated charcoal was often seen as a stronger choice. Some even considered it more of a psychological trick than something that actually worked. Yet scientific analysis today confirms that baking soda doesn't just mask odors. It actually has the ability to neutralize acidic or basic odor molecules, making the fridge space scientifically cleaner. To use this tip, just place an open box of powder or a small bowl on a shelf. And don't forget to replace it once a month. Every now and then, give the box a little shake to expose a fresh layer of powder. This is an incredibly simple, cheap, and safe traditional method, a testament to the smart lifestyle of the previous generation. Borax is your grandmother's most reliable legacy in the garden. A $4 box, 1,000 years of proven results, and an industry that hoped you would never find out. If any of these 17 things changed how you think about your garden, drop your number in the comments. Tell me which one surprised you the most, and share this with someone whose garden needs this knowledge before the industry buries it again. If these ancient secrets change the way you look at the simple minerals in your home, please subscribe and like our channel. We are excavating the history they tried to bury. Let's grow a better future together. The next treasure of knowledge will be revealed soon.